This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and a very warm welcome to you wherever you're joining us. This is Africa Live here on CGTN with me, Mahaia Mutua in Nairobi. We'll begin the program in Indonesia, where officials say the crash site of a passenger jet which went missing on Saturday with 62 people on board has been found. Authorities say search and rescue teams have found some body parts and debris in waters near Indonesia's capital. A dozen vessels, including 4 warships, have been deployed between Langkang Island and Laki Island, north of Jakarta. The Boeing 737-500, belonging to budget airline Srijawa Air, had plunged into a steep dive shortly after takeoff in Jakarta. The cause has not yet been determined. Silkina Aluwalia with more.
Indonesia's transport minister said in a press conference on Sunday morning that they have found the exact location where flight SJ182 went down. So it's much easier for them to search deeper around that area now. Authorities also mentioned that they have found signals from that specific area, but again, they didn't mention if it was signals coming from the flight or maybe the black box. So we're still waiting for more confirmation on that. So far, rescue officials say they have found debris that they believe could be flight remains and also some body parts, but they haven't confirmed anything yet because some of the debris are just small pieces of wires and they don't want to jump into conclusions before they have analyzed it. They are waiting for officials in the hospital to run some tests to make sure that the body parts belong to passengers from this flight. Authorities also said that they have taken medical records from some of the family members to match the DNA from the body parts. There's just a lot of information out there right now, and authorities are scaling this down as fast as they can. And also, this is very different if we see from what happened to Lion Air 2 years ago when it crashed. Almost immediately, authorities found remains of that aircraft, and it was clearly the logo of the airline. But for this flight, search operations are a little bit more challenging. This is the rainy season in Indonesia right now. It's very common to experience heavy rains and winds. So the search operations is even more challenging during this time.
Let's turn to West Africa now, where Senegal's President Macky Sall has announced a new state of emergency in the country, alongside a 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew in the cities of Dakar and Thiès, where the majority of COVID-19 cases are. And as CGTN's Enoxi Collier reports, the move is aimed at controlling rising coronavirus infections in the West African nation.
The new measures come just 6 months after a first state of emergency that was lifted in an attempt to bolster Senegal's economy, which was hit hard by movement restrictions.
This is a grave hour. On the recommendation of the medical corps, I have decided to declare a state of emergency in 2 regions.
The president says a COVID-19 vaccination strategy is urgently needed to further protect the Senegal's population.
A national vaccination strategy will be proposed as soon as possible. It will give priority to medical staff in certain target groups that require the greatest attention.
The government has warned against public fatigue with the anti-COVID-19 measures, which include wearing of face masks in public areas and a ban on gatherings, among others, saying that all this could be the root of the resurgence of the pandemic in Senegal. Enoxi Collier, CGTN.
Now, with more than 200,000 active COVID-19 cases in South Africa, healthcare facilities in the country are now near full capacity. However, the situation in the Western Cape may be improving, as CGTN's Travers Andrews now reports.
It's been a grueling few weeks for South African healthcare workers. They've worked around the clock to deal with the COVID-19 resurgence. The Western Cape has been one of the hardest hit provinces in the country. However, health officials believe that the tide may be turning in the fight to contain the spread of the coronavirus infections.
We are comfortable that we are in fact have plateaued in the province overall. There are very, very encouraging signs that confirm that for us. Our active cases has been declining over the last couple of days. In fact, our test positivity, which is the proportion of people who test positive, that's also been showing a decline. And the number of people admitted to hospital on a daily basis has in fact also been declining.
The Western Cape has been using 76 tons of oxygen a day, considered an unprecedented amount. Oxygen is used to treat severe and critically ill COVID-19 patients.
We have been putting in place some contingency plans with regard to oxygen therapy, for example, which is one of our which remains a key cornerstone of our treatment regime. And so we've brought additional oxygen therapy into the province.
South Africa's military has also been called in to assist with treating COVID-19 patients. The military will be providing doctors, nursing staff and transportation resources. Authorities say the banning of alcohol sales in South Africa has greatly assisted the overall healthcare response because beds have been freed up for COVID-19 patients that will be taken by those admitted for alcohol-related trauma. And with the first shipment of a COVID-19 vaccine on the way, it's further relief for hard-pressed healthcare workers.
At the moment in the province, in the Department of Health, we have 37,000 healthcare workers, and we also have about 10,000 healthcare workers in the city of Cape Town. Then we are at the moment working with the private sector to calculate how many healthcare workers the private sector has as well. And that's the full total and quantum of healthcare workers we will be administering the vaccine to.
February will also see another 500,000 doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine arrive in the country. The additional doses will no doubt provide a huge boost to combat the spread of the coronavirus. That's Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
The death toll from the coronavirus has surpassed 80,000 in the UK. Most of the country is in full lockdown, including London. Authorities have urged people to follow the restrictions and act like they already have the virus. Jemima Walker reports from London.
A healthcare system being stretched to its limits. Estrella Catalan is a nurse. Her expertise are badly needed. But, like so many others, she's found herself becoming a COVID-19 patient.
I want to help. I don't know when. I don't mind working and I'm doing even extra shift to help the trust, but I'm here as a patient. I'm helpless.
Act like you have the virus. That's the message being driven home by the government in a new advertising campaign.
Once more, we must all stay home. If it is essential to go out, remember, wash your hands, cover your face indoors, and keep your distance from others. Vaccines give clear hope for the future, but for now, we must all stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
The soaring infection numbers in the UK are being driven partly by the new, more transmissible strain of the virus.
This virus is not quite as transmissible as chickenpox and measles, but it's in that ballpark, we think. So if you're talking to somebody and you're both not masked, the risk will be higher than with the previous strains of the virus. Even if you are masked now, with this higher transmissibility, the masking may not be sufficient over that time period, 5 to 15 minutes, to protect you completely. With this new virus, the social distancing of 2 meters is really much more important than it was before. And the wearing of face masks universally between speaker and listener in those encounters is more important than it was before.
The vaccine rollout does provide a light at the end of the tunnel. But experts say it's likely infection numbers won't substantially fall for weeks, if not months. At least one member of the government's advisory committee has called for a tougher lockdown. The order now and for the foreseeable future is stay at home. Jemima Walker, CGTN, London.
Well, COVID-19 continues to rage throughout the United States, topping 22 million cases on Saturday, with deaths reaching over 370,000. Health officials warn that things could get worse over the coming weeks. Adis Tiansan reports.
In the hardest hit state of California, Friday was the worst day yet for fatalities, with 676 lives lost. That includes the record-breaking 318 deaths in the county of Los Angeles alone, which has been the epicenter of the pandemic for several days. It comes as the city's ambulance crews are struggling with a surging call volume, sickening staff, and a record-breaking 17-hour wait time for one reported EMT trying to offload a critically ill patient. At this point, health officials are putting up field hospitals, and some are even asking for assistance from the hospital ship USNS Mercy to come back, as medical facilities in the entire region are out of hospital ICU capacities and extremely short-staffed. In the meantime, the impact of this prolonged stay-at-home order is taking a huge toll in much of the state. Governor Gavin Newsom's proposed on Friday a state budget that includes more than $14 billion for a variety of coronavirus relief initiatives for businesses, for the unemployed, and billions of dollars for education, including emergency grants to reopen campuses as soon as possible. But of course, one of the main priorities right now is the vaccination efforts. Despite a very slow start, the governor has announced an ambitious target of vaccinating an additional 1 million people against COVID-19 over the next 9 days. It's not clear how it's going to be done, just as it's unclear whether the inoculations can get a grip on this unprecedented spread we're seeing across California. It is Tianshan, CGTN, Los Angeles.
Well, some supporters of U.S. President Donald Trump are reportedly intensifying calls for more violence after rioting in the U.S. Capitol building earlier this week. This has raised security concerns over President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration on January the 20th. Jagruti Dave reports from Washington, D.C.
So Joe Biden is expected to be inaugurated on the steps of the US Capitol and give his speech from there, as is tradition. We know that Joe Biden's inauguration was expected to be much smaller than usual because his team were considering COVID-19 precautions. But clearly, the plans that the Biden campaign and the transition team, the inauguration committee, is making, the security of that event is being reviewed. And there are concerns that of further attacks, not just potentially for the inauguration day itself, but in the lead up, in the 11 remaining days before January the 20th. So even in light of the riots this week, what we have seen in this capital city around the Capitol building itself is an increased presence of the National Guard at strategic points. We've seen the erection of a 7-foot fence around the building and concrete barricades. So security being stepped up here, questions being asked, an investigation likely to be ensuing over exactly how such a heavily fortified building like the Congressional Building was able to be breached, and lots of scrutiny on Capitol Police and their role in what happened.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has completed his visit to Africa on Saturday after touring the island of Seychelles. He also visited Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Botswana and Tanzania during the tour aimed at strengthening development, economic and security ties. CGTN's Enoch Sikolia looks at the relationship between China and Africa and what this latest visit could spell for both the African continent and China.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi was here with the message that China's friendship and care for Africa is unwavering. His visit, which comes at a time when many of Africa's economies have been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic, also served to reassure the people of Africa that they could rely on China's support. Forging stronger and mutually beneficial ties, as well as battling against the COVID-19 pandemic, were top on the agenda.
It is important that the first visit of the minister per year is to Africa, which sends a very strong message.
China's presence and influence on the African landscape is growing exponentially, from expanding railway lines, highways and building energy generation projects, including hydropower and geothermal ones. Chinese firms are leaving their footprints on the continent. These projects have been backed by the Chinese government. Infrastructure projects, especially those in the energy and transport sectors, are key enablers of economic growth. Professor Mahaia Mutua of the United States International University in Nairobi says Africa struggled on this front until China stepped into the picture.
The developments taking place were not taking place before the Chinese showed serious interest in doing so. And when there is that development concern, it is good for African countries because they open up the countries, they increase the level of security, economic activities, and they open up the global horizons to many parts of Africa.
The China-Africa relationship has been on a steady rise, and the support the African countries have been receiving from the People's Republic of China has seemingly added flavor to that relationship. Foreign Minister Wang Yi has assured the leadership of the 5 countries that Africa remains a priority for China. His visit coincides with Africa's struggle to get much-needed COVID-19 vaccines, with Western manufacturers placing Africa down the pecking order in the distribution of their vaccines. Some countries are shifting their search to China. Already Morocco and Egypt have sought vaccines from Chinese companies, and Kenya too is seeking the same.
And the COVID-19 has helped to reinforce mutual reliance between the African countries and China on things that matter. Containing the pandemic is one of them, but continuous economic interaction is another, and of course the political interaction.
The Belt and Road Initiative, which is China's international flagship project, was also at the center of discussions. The visit by the foreign minister comes at a time China continues to outflank and outspend Western countries on the continent. The Chinese government has sunk millions of dollars, much of it in loans, for infrastructure projects which African countries desperately needed. China is also keen on supporting the continent on the military front, even as African nations continue to battle insurgents such as Somalia's Al-Shabaab and Nigeria's Boko Haram. Enoch Sikoli, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, earlier we spoke to Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Africa Policy Institute, based here in Nairobi, on Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's Africa visit.
Well, the need to have China and Africa forge close ties is never in doubt. The benefit of the same has already been confirmed. Therefore, it is the visit by the top Chinese officials to Africa or top African officials to China is for mutual benefit of China and Africa, as part and parcel of creating those close linkages, which are beginning to manifest themselves in rapid development on the continent. Basically, the agenda for Africa's engagement with China is based on African Agenda 2063, which is rapid development of the continent, stabilizing the continent, and linking African markets to the global markets. And essentially, this is an agenda that is shared between China and Africa. We do appreciate, those of us who are in Africa, China's determination and serious efforts to link its own support for Africa, its intervention in Africa's development, to its own core mandate, which is Agenda 2063, and the various agendas adopted by African countries. For example, Vision 2030 in Kenya, Vision 2030, I think, in Uganda, and so on and so forth. So essentially, one can appreciate the effort that the Chinese people are making to not dictate to Africans what their development priorities should be, but on the contrary, to fund what African countries want to be funded or what they consider as their priorities.
Stay with us here on Africa Live as we take a short break now, coming up when we return. Niger's Interior Minister promises government's full support to the country's Tillabéri region. And Egypt opens dialogue with several Libyan rival factions.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Africa Live. To Somalia now, where Prime Minister Hussein Roble has announced that polls will commence in 4 regional administrations after the 2 key states of Puntland and Jubaland refused to endorse the process. According to Hussein, the states of Galmudug, Hirshabelle, Southwest and Banadir will begin the electoral process expected later this month. The Prime Minister made the announcement in the presence of the leaders of the 4 regions. Puntland and Jubaland states are, however, opposed to the polls, saying they have no confidence in the country's interim electoral commission. Niger's government has assured people living in the country's Tillaberi region of their security after last Saturday's massacre of about 100 people by insurgents. Interior Minister Al-Kache Al-Hada held a meeting with the local leaders in Ulam town where he promised the government's full support and tighter security measures along the border with Mali. This comes after the government declared 3 days of mourning. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has more details.
It's been a week since a massacre took place in western Niger's Tillaberi region. Around 100 jihadists raided Chubangu and Zorumdare villages on motorcycles. They killed nearly 100 people and injured many others. The United Nations says about 11,000 people have also been displaced. Local leaders say this latest attack is the region's worst since Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda insurgents waged a violent campaign there. The Niger government has declared 3 days of mourning, and on Saturday the Interior Minister met leaders at Ulam town and pledged government support for them.
I ask you not to be distracted by this enemy who seeks to divide you in order to weaken you. By so doing, you would give the enemy the means to achieve his disastrous objectives.
The attackers are said to have crossed the border from nearby Mali. The leadership in Niger says it's keen on reinforcing security around the porous border.
In the case of our country, the sources of instability where these acts are committed tend to be concentrated in the peripheral and border areas, where the state is weak and struggles to meet the basic social needs of the population, but also, and above all, their need for justice, protection, and peace.
The objective of this forum is not only to build a climate of trust between the different communities and the different components of the population, but also to contribute to the promotion of dialogue and the consolidation of peace.
The violence took place soon after the first round of presidential elections were announced, in which President Mahamadou Issoufou emerged winner. The Western African country is part of the Sahel region that has experienced attacks from terror groups based in Mali. According to the UN, the Sahel region is described as the hub of one of the world's fastest growing displacement and protection crises. It hosts nearly 900,000 refugees and nearly 2 million displaced people. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
Now, lately, Egypt has been opening lines of communications with all Libyan factions. Egypt's ties with the eastern tribes are strong as Cairo was backing east-based forces under General Khalifa Haftar in the Libyan conflict. But weaker ties with the south and almost none with the Tripoli-based government in the west have affected Egypt's ability to mediate in peace talks. Here is Adel Makhroui with more.
The past 2 weeks have seen unprecedented communication between Cairo and Libya's government of national accord in Tripoli. Interior Minister Fathi Bashagha paid his first visit to Cairo a few days before the year ended. Then an Egyptian intelligence security delegation went to the Libyan capital for dialogue. The talks were the first of its kind since 2014.
I believe Egypt's being pragmatic. It has lately realized its ultimate reliance on Haftar to control Libya was not of benefit. On the contrary, that support may have worsened the situation with Egypt. Haftar's insistence on military confrontation has pushed Tripoli to bring Turkish troops to Libya. Turkish influence and military presence wouldn't have been so big. I hope that this closeness continues because both of them need each other.
Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry revived communications with Mohammed Sayyala, his GNA counterpart, to resume diplomatic ties. The two sides are now discussing activating a Four Freedoms Agreement. The agreement would cover travel, property ownership, residency, and work between Egypt and Libya. Some analysts, though, believe that the resumption of ties between Cairo and Tripoli will be cautious.
Both sides will not launch full relations. They will be cautious because, in reality, Egypt doesn't fully trust the Libyan government. Also, the government of national accord and Tripoli do not blindly trust Cairo because of Egypt's past stance of supporting Haftar in his military aggression to seize Tripoli. It still remains a positive step. No one wants Libya to become a regional battle zone.
Egypt's apparent change of heart included the south of Libya as well. Cairo has hosted a special meeting with the region's tribes. It concluded with promises that Egypt will establish a consulate in the south and continue coordination to achieve peace.
Egypt has been a vocal supporter of the Libyan National Army led by General Khalifa Haftar and the eastern-based parliament. Cairo appears to be changing that policy not by withdrawing trust from its allies, but rather by opening new lines of communication with everyone in Libya. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Now, Sunday marks a major anniversary for the United Nations. It is 75 years to the day that the world body held its first ever General Assembly meeting at Westminster in London on January the 10th, 1946. Fast forward to today, in a world gripped by the coronavirus pandemic, celebrations are muted and the unity of nations more crucial than ever. From the UN headquarters in New York, Liling Tan now reports.
I have the honor today of welcoming to London this great assembly of delegates of the United Nations.
75 years ago, at Central Hall, Westminster in London, 51 founding nations came together to kick off a colossal multi-nation diplomatic effort. The first meeting of nations under an organization born from the ashes of World War II.
Twice in my lifetime, a war has brought untold sorrow to mankind. Should there be a third world war, the long upward progress towards civilization may be halted for generations.
In the ensuing decades, the UN averted another world war. But smaller conflicts raged, pitting member nations against each other. The Cold War gripped much of the second half of the 20th century. The Vietnam War was America's longest war until Afghanistan. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is almost as old as the UN itself, and genocide did not end with the Holocaust. And today's wars against global terrorism and climate change have dominated the conversation.
As conflicts divided countries and colonies gained independence, the membership of the United Nations nearly quadrupled from 51 countries in 1946 to 193 nations today. And in any normal year, the UN General Assembly Hall in New York, is where they convene to engage in diplomacy, vote on resolutions, and rage against global injustice.
But for some 10 months, the UN and its member nations have faced a pandemic that has brought much of the world to a virtual standstill and international diplomacy onto a virtual format.
The UK was absolutely critical in the constellation of the United Nations. A pandemic, an emergency everybody's dealing with in different ways across the world. which, from what I see in the media, has hurt the UK particularly badly.
With COVID-19 cases spiking in the UK and fears about a new and more contagious strain, earlier plans to mark this UN anniversary in London will now take place online instead. It's also a defining moment for the UN. The organization has been criticized for failing to prevent and respond quickly to many of the crises of the past decades, and its brand of multilateralism has itself come under repeated fire. But in these difficult times, diplomats agree the world body is needed now more than ever to fight this threat that defies borders. Li Lingtan, CGTN, the United Nations in New York.
Now, China has issued a white paper on the nation's diplomatic efforts, outlining its principles, approaches, and future plans. The document, published by the State Council, lists examples of China's steady increase in international cooperation. From 2013 to 2018, China allocated over $40 billion for foreign aid, giving priority to the least developed countries in Asia and Africa. It indicates China has contributed to policy, infrastructure, trade, financial and people-to-people connectivity to promote Belt and Road cooperation. The paper also says China has made efforts to tackle major global challenges such as the coronavirus pandemic and emergency disasters. The white paper details China's contributions to the UN 2030 agenda for sustainable development, including assisting other developing countries to reduce poverty, speed up industrialization, and innovation-driven economic growth. It also says China will continue to uphold its stated vision of a community with a shared future and follow the principle of pursuing and promoting more cooperation. It's time for us to take another short break. Here's what's coming up in the business. Tunisia set to hold talks on economic and political reforms. And Egypt shifts its focus to natural gas and renewable energy.
This has taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Time for the business top stories. Tunisian President Kais Saied will launch a national dialogue in the coming weeks that will include political parties and youth from all regions. The presidency said the dialogue proposed by the powerful Tunisian General Labour Union UGTT seeks economic, social and political reforms. Adnan Shawashi has more on that now.
President Kais Saied declared that the comprehensive national dialogue involving all stakeholders aims at developing a strategy to address the stifling crisis facing Tunisia. The head of state says the initiative will also bolster national solidarity and prevent the country from sinking into chaos and divisions.
Unlike the previous dialogue initiatives, the new talks cannot be effective without involving all parties, but especially youth from all regions who can come up with solutions. The demands of Tunisians are the same since 10 years ago. Almost nothing was achieved, but the situation in some sectors has become worse.
The Secretary General of the Tunisian General Labour Union UGTT said the country is currently experiencing a very difficult socio-economic situation, which has been further exacerbated by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Labour Union's National Dialogue Initiative is geared towards finding solutions to the current crisis.
We call for national choices that we can develop together because the state is facing unprecedented political, economic and social challenges. The support of the president is important because the presidency is neutral and can bring all Tunisians together.
Analysts stress the need to ensure a favorable social climate in Tunisia in order to keep households and companies afloat, protect jobs and incomes, and prevent the economy from collapsing.
Unusual problems require exceptional measures and solutions in 2021. The economy is completely paralyzed due to the impact of the pandemic, but also the spread of social unrest. Sit-ins and strikes continue throughout the country. Only a serious dialogue initiative involving all parties can stabilize Tunisia and revive the economy.
In December 2015, the Tunisian General Labour Union, the Employers' Organization, the Human Rights League and the National Bar Association received the Nobel Peace Prize. The quartet helped pull the country back from civil war in 2013. Tunisians hope that the new initiative by the president and the UGTT will save the country. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Egypt's first ever exhibition on technologies for converting vehicles to use natural gas has drawn huge interest from investors and car owners. It comes as the government accelerates plans to operate vehicles on a bi-fuel system in a move aimed at tapping into the renewable energy sector. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has more from Cairo.
30 international companies congregated at the first fair for vehicle technology known as Go Green exhibition to showcase their vehicles that run on clean energy. This included Trella, the first natural gas-run heavy truck in the Middle East and North Africa.
It's important because first, the environmental effects are better. Natural gas emits clean energy as opposed to diesel and fuel. Secondly, we import diesel and fuel at a higher cost. So using local natural gas instead will save a lot of money for the economy and state budget. Third and most important, the cost of operating and maintaining these cars is 50% lower than fuel and diesel vehicles. So it's a huge benefit for Egyptians.
The Go Green Technology Fair is seen as the platform to launch the government's ambitious plan to convert as many vehicles from fuel to natural gas or dual engines. It's also promoting electric cars. A set of facilities have been put in place to encourage Egyptians to take this step. It includes $1 billion subsidy fund by the central bank to help embrace the eco-friendly cars.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi attended the inauguration to highlight the importance of this initiative to the country. Egyptians can benefit by replacing their old cars with a new clean energy one and pay the difference in installments of over 7 to 10 years at subsidized 3% interest rate, which is much lower than the 12% market rate. The other option is converting their cars into natural gas, which is also at a facilitated payment plan.
At the moment, 600 natural gas fueling stations are under construction around the North African country. Meanwhile, Chinese companies, which were given the go-ahead to produce clean energy cars and buses in Egypt, were present at the exhibition.
The BYD and JIC brands attracted me the most here, as well as the Chinese MG. The Chinese cars are the most suitable to our market. I will buy a Chinese brand electric car.
I am selling my car, and I'm here to study and choose the new car that I will buy. It will definitely save me a lot of money and costs. You have seen how high fuel prices are.
The Go Green exhibition has proved a success. In just 3 days, over 24,000 people applied to convert their cars to run on natural gas. This compares to the 46,000 people who did the same for the whole of 2020. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Turning to Nigeria, where the country is witnessing a rapid rise in the adoption of digital currency and now leads Africa in cryptocurrency usage. More people are now using cryptocurrency in Africa's biggest economy for their business transactions and investments to help them hedge against the depreciation of the local currency, the Naira. CGTN's Deji Badmus has more on this from Lagos.
When cryptocurrency operator Luno opened shop in the Nigerian commercial city of Lagos back in 2016, interest in digital currency was nowhere close to what it is now, and the government didn't take any interest. But about 5 years down the line, all of that has changed.
The uptake has been pretty impressive. I was discussing with my colleague, sign-ups we see every day is massive. So people, in other words, it means that people are actually interested in this new technology.
It's the same story for another operator, My Top Exchange, which has seen a massive growth in sign-ups in the past 4 years.
The truth of the matter is, people are actually jumping into this cryptocurrency world or trend. Just one reason: they want to make money, they want to make profit, they want to make astronomical profit.
The adoption of cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, has grown rapidly in Nigeria in the last 5 years. Data from global peer-to-peer marketplace Paxful shows the country traded 60,215 Bitcoins valued at over $566 million within that period. It's the second largest volume worldwide and only behind the US. And it's not only the quest for quick, huge profit that is driving the volumes.
I have customers that they usually make payments to their suppliers using cryptocurrency, because going through the banking system, of course, for a bank, you have a limit to what you can get in terms of foreign currency. So people just use Bitcoin, because with Bitcoin, you can get any amount, well, specifically some sort of amount, and then transferring is not going to be of so much difficulty. It's pretty much easy and frictionless, and the person gets it within minutes, so it's instant.
Several factors are combining to promote the growth in the use of cryptocurrency across Africa. During the national lockdown in Nigeria, for instance, Paxful reported a 30% rise in Bitcoin trade in the country. The vast majority of those embracing the trend are young people.
What we're also doing is focusing on education, because perception around cryptocurrency is still something we're trying to improve on. Some people see it as a complex technology. Oh, I don't want to invest. Some people see it as a Ponzi scheme, right? Oh, okay, I'm not, so these people are criminals and all that. And then other people just think, oh, you know what, cryptocurrency, I don't have the money to invest in cryptocurrency.
And as the crypto rush continues, some experts are quick to warn potential investors to watch out for the risk and hedge against it.
It's a very volatile market, extremely volatile market. Within a twinkle of an eye, it can appreciate and gain so much value. And also within a twinkle of an eye, it can depreciate and lose can lose like 100% of the value it gained yesterday. So that is why you don't invest more than what you can afford to lose.
Despite the risk, digital currency experts project a continued rise in the adoption of cryptocurrency across the continent, especially given the weaknesses and instability around local currencies. And after initially kicking against the adoption, governments across the continent are now beginning to embrace it and roll out measures to regulate the trade in cryptocurrency.
Money is evolving, so that's weird. So it's something that we cannot control. The best we can do is be part of this new technology, because it's here to stay.
It's an inevitability many are now resigning to, including governments across the world. Deji Badmus, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
And here's what's still to come here on Africa Live. We look at Tunisia's old age Stambali dance associated with healing.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. Now, Stambali art is a form of dance from Tunisia practiced in many regions across the North African country. Those who practice it say it improves personal well-being. Adnan Shawashi tells us more about this unique dance.
This monthly Stambali art show is made up of transcendent music and dance, as well as religious chants. The ritual starts with prayers to usher in the new year.
Stambali is folklore and folk art. It's a very old cultural heritage which is rooted in the Tunisian society. It can be expressed in different ways and forms. Stambali is part of the rich mystic music, dance and traditions in North Africa.
Riyad is a Stambali choreographer who practiced this rite in many regions across Tunisia and North Africa.
Stambali art is not limited to Tunisia. It is widespread in the region. It's known as Nawa in Morocco, Diwan in Algeria, Bakari in Libya, Bori in Mauritania. This ritual brings people together.
Hassan is a Stambali master from the city of Tozeur in southern Tunisia. He believes in the healing qualities of the ritual, which is produced by an ascending tempo of rhythmic music and a corresponding increased speed of the participants' movements of head and extremities.
Attending a Stambali ritual can help many people feel better as they sing and dance to enter the trance state. This is not medicine, it's rather an exceptional art.
In January 1846, Tunisia abolished slavery. Tunisian historians say the history of Stambali goes back to the arrival of the first slaves to the North African state. Some 20 Tunisian troops still perpetuate and promote African traditions in Stambali shows.
The Ministry of Culture and the civil society plan to organize the Stambali Festival this year. It will bring together international troops, masters, musicians and dancers who will share this Tunisian art and cultural heritage of humanity. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Well, we're keeping things active here on Africa Live. Here's what's coming up in the sport. We look into Tanzania's efforts to get sports back on track going into 2021.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Welcome to the sport. Now, the coronavirus pandemic disrupted sports all over the world over the past year, including in Tanzania. But the East African nation was the first on the continent to resume football, and the country is now looking forward to a fruitful year, starting with the Africa this month. Here is CGTN's Isaac Lukando with more.
It took Tanzania's sports community just 3 months to get back to work. A 3-month ban on sporting activities was lifted on June the 1st, which was significantly earlier than many countries. Still, time was lost according to Tanzania's national team goalkeeper.
When you're preparing yourself for the season, your expectation is to get yourself to the level you have set for yourself. But all of a sudden, the league has stopped. We stopped practicing, everything stopped. So it took a while. And individual practice versus team practice are two different things.
Tanzania qualified for the Chan Football Championships, which were later postponed due to COVID-19. Still, Kaseja says the government's decision to restart the league early should pay off.
Being the first to restart our league has given us an opportunity for our players to prepare. When we go to international games as part of the national team, we are ready. So it was a very good thing.
While football dominates Tanzanian sports, other sports were also affected by COVID-19. Hopes of beach volleyball and athletics being represented at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics were dashed by COVID-19.
Sporting will remain banned across most parts of Africa, and restrictions on movement and gatherings mean training and competitions are difficult to stage. The resumption of sporting activities in Tanzania sets it apart since its sporting professionals have managed to keep their income going.
Analysts say Tanzanian sports suffered less financially than in other parts of Africa, but there are lessons to be learned.
We hadn't planned what to do in the event of an international crisis and sporting activities can't continue. Regulations for different sports. I feel that this is a major area to work on to create specific regulations on how to proceed.
2020 was a particularly hard year for Tanzanian football fans.
Stopping the league and restarting lowered enthusiasm because, for football, being in a group, discussing and meeting up somewhere to watch matches gets you psyched up, unlike being alone.
I believe that if there won't be a Corona-like event this year, Tanzanian fans love football, and I believe their numbers will increase in the coming season.
As the year winds down, sportsmen and women and their fans are very much hoping